Sure.
All right, Sheriff Dan Springer, thank you for joining me. So I just have a few questions on House Bill 251, the Right to Work bill. Um, and my first question is, what do you think about House Bill 251? And how do you think it could have affected those being employed by the Gallatin County Sheriff's Office?
Sure. Well, my I don't honestly, I have much of a personal opinion on it. I certainly am not someone that sets laws or does anything with statutes. As far as my employees go, they, they did the association. We don't necessarily have a union per se. It's called an association, so it's somewhat different, but in concept, it's the same thing.
Okay.
They did not come to me with any concerns. So they did not ask me to go up to the legislature and help them or not help them. And I don't think they even went up there and talked about it. So it obviously was not a hot topic for them. And so since they were, I did not hear from them. So there was no real need to address it at that time. So I don't think, as far as my employees go, it didn't seem to be it did not seem to affect them, as they did not come to me.
Okay. Does the association have much does the association have much say in policy that's made at the Gallatin County Sheriff's Office?
Yeah, that's one thing that's always been kind of great about here is we have a really good relationship with our association, partly because we all do the same work. There just happens to be, depending upon where you promote in the system, whether you're in the association or not. And then this association is made up of essentially three parts. So you have sworn deputies that are in it, you have detention officers that are in it, and then we have what would be called support staff. So there's kind of three parts, but they're all under the same association. And so they all have kind of similar needs and some needs that are different. And so the areas that they typically work on are the three big ones, right? Benefits, working conditions, and salaries. And they're kind of stuck because the sheriff's deputies can't negotiate their salaries as it's attached to the sheriff's salary per state statute. So there's obviously salaries is the big one for almost all unions, right? And I'm sure there's working conditions and benefits and all that, but salaries are a big deal. And so about half of the association members can't even negotiate their salaries. So the way it works in the state of Montana is there is they're paid, the deputy is paid between 72 and 90% of the sheriff's salary. And that percentage is then set by organizational policy. So I have a policy that sets out how much you make your first year, your second year, fifth year, 10th year, sergeants, captains, whatever the promotions are. But then the undersheriff makes 95% of the sheriff's salary, and captains make 90%, and no one can make more than 90% other than the undersheriff. So that kind of takes all of that takes a lot of that out of it. Now there's little things you can do, like add-ons on-call pay, collateral duty pays. There's all these little things that are out there. So there are little add-ons that the association works for. With the detention center employees, obviously they can work their salaries. So that is a big one for them. And so they do that during contract negotiations, same with support staff. So I guess to kind of answer some of your questions there, we have a really an excellent relationship because we've all done the same work or currently do the same. So there's a pretty good mutual respect there. We rarely have these big butting battles. Now, I'm not going to say that's always been the case. I was a union president, a lifetime ago, 20 some years ago, right? And it wasn't always that easy. So the relationship is really good. So that helps.
So you'd say, all in all, that the union is beneficial for the sheriffs that work in the Gallatin County Sheriff's Office?
Yeah, I think, in the big scheme of things, it does seem to benefit them. Certainly when there was maybe, I can't remember the years now, but there was a lawsuit that had gone into place here in Gallatin County based upon some things that had been done, some salary stuff that had occurred in the probably 2008 range. And ultimately, there was a lawsuit filed by the association against the county, and the association won. And so in those areas, yeah, I mean, obviously that was a huge benefit to the association members, and it kind of squared away how they're going to get paid. And So in those sense, in that sense, I can see that was like one of the big ones where the association was a big, help to the members. But then in other ways, we have, when we sit down with negotiations, they do anywhere from a 1 to 3 year contract typically. Excuse me. And we're currently in negotiations right now. But historically, we've had attorneys against attorneys or negotiators against negotiators and mediators. And this year, the association decided they'd like to come in without lawyers. We have a lawyer for the county that helps us with the verbiage, right, of contracts. But very amicable, having sit down, have good conversations, discuss the reality of things. The association is extremely reasonable. They understand that there's a reality to finances, and so we're able to kind of work through all these issues. It takes us a while typically, but we get there.
So do the sheriffs have to pay a bit of their salary? Like, is it taken out for the association?
Yeah, I think that's and I don't know the answer to your question because that's a union issue. Okay. But I do know that they have money that comes out of their paycheck that goes towards their association dues. Okay. I think they can opt out. I don't know the answer to that though. Okay. So that would be more of an association question. But they, I think there was a time there where they became members of the Fraternal Order of Police, and I'm not sure they're still in that, but they might be, which kind of would help them at the legislative level, probably more than anything. But I have not heard if they're still doing that or not. I just don't know.
Okay. So moving away from those are the questions I had about the union, but moving away from that, are there any labor policies that you're wanting to implement for the sheriff's office? If so, are you excited about these new policies?
So, yeah, I mean, there's, first off, one thing is the association's contract is with the county, even though I end up kind of being the middleman, right? I work with the county and with the deputies. And so but they ultimately sign the contract with the county commissioners.
Okay, I see.
So that's where it kind of comes to. But as far as I am an elected official, and so I have, a lot of rights that are afforded to me that way. And so when we come to policies and those sort of things, a lot of the working conditions, when you talk about benefits and salaries, that really comes with the contract that they work with the commissioners. But if you start talking about working conditions, that falls a lot on my policies, as far as schedules, what days of the week they work, how they, those kind of things, right? Those are really more policy generated. So where I kind of get into play with a lot of the, sorry, I had my notes. Let me look real quick. As I get into the labor policies, it is more in my policy manuals. And so one of the things that's happened recently is we did do a staffing analysis that was approved by the commissioners. And this was done last year. Well, it's been gone for a year, then finished last year, and kind of laid out where we are with our staffing. But one of the things that came with that is saying you're not using your staff in the most effective manner that you can. So we went from, and what they recommend was a 12-hour shift instead of a 10-hour schedule. So 10-hour shifts, you end up with 4 days on, 3 days off, but there's 24 hours in a day, not 30 hours in a day if you have 3 shifts, right? So the 12-hour shift does make more sense because you can cover better with fewer people. So, but what we did in that sense, just jamming a 12-hour shift down people's throats can be kind of difficult. So we went to the union, we talked to them, we had a couple of meetings. The sheriff, I was the undersheriff at the time, but the sheriff at the time, he and I had meetings with them, talked about this is what we would like to see, but we also understand that can be hardship. And so we met with deputies, we met with their families, that anyone could come in and talk to us about it in a couple of different settings. And we had some family members come in and say, this is really hard on us because of X, Y, or Z. So what we ultimately ended up doing was, you got to choose if you wanted to be on a 10-hour shift or a 12-hour shift. And then we have shift bids for both. But once you chose, if you said, I want to go on 10s, then you were set to that shift bid, right? And if you wanted 12s, then you're set to that shift bid for that event, for that shift bid. ultimately now we only have like 3 or 4 deputies that want to remain on 10s. The rest of them have all gone to 12s.
Okay.
So when we set our policies, our labor policies like that, we really, I truly do try to make it in conjunction with the deputies. The happier we can keep them, the happier they work and the happier we are. So the better we get along, man, it makes all the difference in the world.
Awesome. That sounds really good. Well, that's as much time as I got. Thank you so much for wanting to do this interview with me, Sheriff.
No worries. I appreciate you taking the time to talk to us. I like your flag in the back. That's awesome.
Thank you.
I don't know what it means, but it's kind of cool. It's North Star and Dipper.
That's the Alaska flag. That's my roommate.
Alaska. That's where you're from. Cool. Yeah. Oh, your roommate, you said?
Yeah, my roommate. He's from Alaska.
Yeah. Okay, very cool. All right, man. Have a good one. Thank you.
Thank you. You too. Bye.
Yep.